Hello, welcome to the channel Y Stories. Enjoy watching.
My mother-in-law accidentally washed my passport before the vacation and exclaimed with surprise, "What a pity. Now, we will fly to the Canary Islands just with my little son." But she didn't know that I had prepared for this. Carmen Rodriguez, sitting in a stuffy office, opened photos of Canary Islands beaches on her phone for the 100th time. Turquoise water, almost unnaturally clear, white sand like flour, bungalows on stilts. All of it seemed so far from her reality, the desk cluttered with papers, tasteless coffee from the machine, and endless Excel spreadsheets. But Carmen knew for sure, this dream would soon come true. Exactly 1 year ago, when she and Miguel had just gotten married, she suggested saving up for a big trip. Miguel, as always, smiled and said, "Anything you want, Pequeña." His compliance, however, was not only due to love for his wife but also years of living under the control of his domineering mother, Dolores Fernandez, who had spent 30 years instilling in her son the inability to oppose older women. Carmen's thoughts were interrupted by a call. The screen displayed Mia Moore. "Hi. Did you forget about meeting with my mom?" Miguel's voice sounded tense. "She's calling me for the third time." Carmen sighed heavily. Their family dinners with her mother-in-law every Friday had long turned into a real ordeal. Dolores Fernandez, a former math teacher, never missed a chance to point out any, even the smallest, mistake of her daughter-in-law. "I remember, of course," Carmen replied. "I've already ordered delivery from that Spanish restaurant." Mom asked for Latin American cuisine. Miguel's voice sounded apologetic. "Miguelito, we ordered Latin American cuisine last Friday and the Friday before. But, you know, Mom is retired, she's conservative." "All right," Carmen interrupted him, understanding that arguing was pointless. "I'll reorder." In the evening, as she set out plates with paella and gazpacho, Carmen once again wondered why the apartment that she and Miguel bought with a mortgage after their wedding had become something like a branch of Dolores Fernandez's home. Her mother-in-law would inspect every corner, comment on the cleaning, peer into the fridge with remarks about the young couple's wastefulness. "Is this imported ham?" Dolores Fernandez wrinkled her nose. "In my time, we lived more modestly." Miguelito was always content with the regular Spanish kind. Miguel, who worked as a senior engineer at a large company, only nodded sheepishly, as if apologizing for being able to afford something better than he had as a child. Carmen rolled her eyes every time her mother-in-law turned away. She was astonished that such an independent and successful woman like Dolores Fernandez, a retired school director and community activist, could be so petty toward her own son and his wife. After the third glass of sangria, of course brought by Dolores Fernandez, because store-bought trash doesn't compare to mine, her mother-in-law began her usual interrogation. "How's your work, Carmencita?" "Still in that, what's it called, office?" She said the word office with clear disdain, though Carmen held a good position as a financial analyst at a bank. "Dona Dolores, I work at one of the largest banks in the country," Carmen replied, once again emphasizing. "And everything is fine with me." Well, her mother-in-law shook her head. "That's good for now. But what about when the kids come? Who will raise them while you're sitting in your bank?" Miguel coughed quietly, and Carmen noticed how his neck flushed red. A clear sign of discomfort. "Mom," we agreed, "it's still too early to talk about children. We have other plans." And at that moment, Carmen decided it was time. There would be no better opportunity. "By the way, about the plans," she took Miguel's hand. "We have a surprise for you, Dona Dolores. We've finally saved up for our dream." Miguel, smiling, pulled a glossy envelope from his desk drawer. "We're going to the Canary Islands in 2 months," he announced ceremoniously. 10 days in paradise. Dolores Fernandez froze with a fork in her hand. Her face froze for a moment, then stretched into a smile that seemed too forced to Carmen. "The Canary Islands?" her mother-in-law asked. "What Canary Islands?" "That's where the bungalows on the water are, and dolphins swim." "My God, Miguelito, you can barely swim." Actually, Mom, I swim pretty well, Miguel quietly objected. I went to the pool all of last year. What pool? Dolores Fernandez dismissed it. It's the ocean. And the flight? 3 hours over water. What about malaria? And sharks? Carmen silently observed this scene, watching how her husband's joy slowly left his eyes. This happened every time Miguel did something on his own without his mother's approval. From joining the robotics club instead of playing guitar, to choosing a technical university over law school. Dolores Fernandez initially categorically rejected any display of independence from her son. Then, when she realized she couldn't stop him, she resigned herself but always found a way to make little digs whenever possible. Dona Dolores, Carmen tried to make her voice sound as friendly as possible. There's no malaria in the Canary Islands, and sharks don't attack tourists. We'll be staying in a 5-star hotel with all the amenities. A 5-star hotel, her mother-in-law's eyebrows rose. And how many euros did you waste on this whim? Miguel named the sum, and Dolores Fernandez clutched her heart. God, with this money, you could have made the down payment for a summer house in Toledo. Or bought a new car, or saved it for my treatment. I'm not getting any younger. There was a long pause. Carmen could see how her husband's shoulders dropped, and she wanted to stand up and kick her mother-in-law out of their home forever. But she knew it would only make things worse. Suddenly, Dolores Fernandez's expression changed, as if someone had flipped a switch, and the strict teacher turned into a caring mother. Well, she spoke with unexpected softness, if you dreamed of it that much. Of course, young people need rest. But, she paused. What about me? I'll be left all alone? Mom, it's only for 10 days, Miguel took his mother's hand. I'll call every day. Of course, Dolores Fernandez nodded, and tears glistened in her eyes. I understand, son. You need to be together. I'm happy for you. Really, I am. But Carmen, watching this instant transformation, felt something was wrong. The sudden change in tactics was unlike her mother-in-law. She usually held on to any decision made without her knowledge for weeks, reminding them of it constantly. When are you leaving? Dolores Fernandez asked, wiping her eyes with a napkin. On July 15th, Miguel answered. All the documents are already ready. Documents? Dolores Fernandez asked. Passports, of course. You have a new one, Miguelito, from that trip to Morocco? Yes, I have a new one, Miguel nodded. And Carmen has one too. Carmen noticed how Dolores Fernandez squinted slightly, as though making a mental note. Her stomach tightened. She had seen that look before, when her mother-in-law accidentally ruined her favorite dress while helping to sort the wardrobe. After dinner, when Miguel went to see his mother off to the taxi, Carmen quickly went to the bedroom and checked the safe, disguised as a bookshelf. The passports were in place. She sighed with relief. This time, she was ready for possible interference. Noticing an old expired passport on the nightstand, Carmen thought, what if? She took the document and placed it in the drawer of the living room cabinet. It was visible enough for a curious person to find, but not too obvious to seem staged. Her premonition told her that her mother-in-law would not leave their plans alone. Miguel returned, a little subdued. She was crying in the taxi, he said, collapsing on the couch. She said we've completely forgotten about her, that she's lonely. Carmen sat next to him and hugged her husband. Miguel, she lives 5 metro stops away from us. We see her every week. You call her every day. She goes to the veterans choir, the pool, and the neighborhood council meetings. She has 3 friends she goes to the summer house with. What loneliness. I know, sighed Miguel. But she's my mother. And you're a good son, Carmen said softly. Too good. So good that you don't see how she manipulates you. Miguel lifted his head, about to object, but Carmen continued. Remember when she accidentally spilled wine on my wedding dress the day before the ceremony? Or when she insisted we redo the bedroom renovation because those wallpapers would cause infertility? Or when she canceled our reservation for my birthday because she had a premonition we would get poisoned there? Miguel remained silent. All these incidents, seemingly harmless eccentricities of an elderly woman, when considered together, painted an unpleasant picture of constant interference in their life. "I love your mom," Carmen lied, gently stroking her husband's hair. "But sometimes it seems like she can't accept that you've grown up." "She's just lonely," Miguel repeated, but without his usual confidence. Carmen decided not to continue the conversation. Instead, she opened her laptop and showed him pictures of their future hotel in the Canary Islands. Gradually, her husband's face brightened, and they spent the evening discussing how they would swim with masks among coral reefs, sunbathe on pristine beaches, and finally get some sleep without receiving early morning calls asking, "Miguelito, do you have clean socks for work?" When they went to bed, Carmen couldn't fall asleep right away. Something told her that her mother-in-law's recent submissiveness was just the calm before the storm. She decided to prepare. Tomorrow, she would order surveillance cameras and install them in the apartment, just in case. Turning onto her other side, Carmen smiled in the dark. The dream was so close, the azure ocean, white sand, and 10 days without Dolores Fernandez. It would be worth enduring a little more. The loud doorbell woke Carmen earlier than the alarm. She struggled to open her eyes and glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m., Saturday. Who could be here this early? Miguel mumbled something sleepily and turned to the other side, pulling the blanket over his head. The doorbell rang again, more insistently, and for a longer time. Carmen, throwing on her robe, shuffled to the front door. "Who's there?" she asked, leaning against the peephole. "It's me, Carmencita." "Open up quickly, I have my hands full." "Dolores Fernandez." "Of course. Who else could show up on a Saturday at 7 in the morning?" Carmen opened the door and barely had time to step back as her mother-in-law quickly entered the hallway, loaded with bags and packages. She smelled of a frosty morning and fresh baked goods. "Good morning, Dona Dolores." Carmen tried to make her voice sound friendly, though inside, she was boiling. "What brings you here so early?" "Oh, Hija, I've been up since early morning." Her mother-in-law shamelessly walked into the kitchen and began unloading the contents of the bags. "I got up at 5, made churros. I know how much Miguelito loves them. Also made paella, baked tortilla. You two are always working late. Who's going to cook for you?" "We manage," Carmen replied curtly, watching the containers of food filling their fridge. "We have delivery, and I can cook too." "Delivery?" Dolores Fernandez snorted. "Is that food?" "Just chemicals and preservatives, but my tortilla is homemade, with farm eggs. I even went to the market when it opened." Carmen wanted to point out that she and Miguel preferred waking up on their one day off no earlier than 10 and that she was much more interested in sleep than tortillas, but decided to stay silent. Any argument with her mother-in-law always led to long discussions with Miguel about how Carmen didn't respect his mother. "Is Miguel still sleeping?" Dolores Fernandez asked, as though just noticing her son's absence. "Yes, it's his day off, we wanted. I'll go wake him up." Without waiting for Carmen to finish, her mother-in-law headed to the bedroom. "Churros are better when hot." "Dona Dolores," Carmen blocked her way. "Miguel is very tired. He worked late all week. Let him sleep." Her mother-in-law stopped, pursing her lips. "So what does this mean? I've been on my feet since 5 in the morning, trying for you, and you?" Just then, the bedroom door opened, and a sleepy Miguel appeared. "Mom, what's going on?" "Miguelito." Dolores Fernandez's face immediately lit up. "I brought you churros with chocolate, just like you love." While Miguel, still half asleep, hugged his mother, Carmen turned on the coffee maker and took out the cups. The day was not going according to plan. She had planned to go to the electronics store to buy the cameras after breakfast, but now she would either have to postpone the trip or come up with an excuse to leave. At breakfast, Dolores Fernandez was unusually lively. You know, I was thinking all night about your trip to the Canaries, she said, putting a third churro on her son's plate. And I've decided you're doing the right thing. You need to rest while you're young. I spent all my time working and didn't even notice how quickly life passed. Carmen looked at her mother-in-law suspiciously. This sudden shift from disapproval yesterday to enthusiasm today seemed strange. I even called my friend Pilar, Dolores Fernandez continued. Her niece works at a travel agency. I asked her everything about your hotel, the conditions. It's a very good place, it seems. Miguel, chewing his churros, raised an eyebrow in surprise. Really, Mom? It's great that you approve of our trip. Of course. Dolores Fernandez smiled brightly. I even asked her to tell me what to pack. It turns out it's a completely different climate, not like Morocco. You'll need special sunscreen, special clothes. We've already bought everything, Carmen interrupted, sipping her coffee. Really? Well, I made a list. Her mother-in-law pulled a notebook from her bag. Special sunscreen, tablets for seasickness. Miguelito, remember how seasick you got on the ferry in Morocco? Mom, that was 10 years ago. Still, it's better to be safe. And you'll need special mosquito repellent, herbal tea for stomach problems. Carmen listened to this stream of concern and realized something was wrong. In the years she had spent with Miguel, she had studied her mother-in-law's habits well. Whenever Dolores Fernandez showed sudden care, it always turned into trouble. And I also thought, her mother-in-law continued, that you might need help preparing for the trip. You don't have much time, and there's so much to do. I can come every day, help with cleaning, ironing. Thank you, Dona Dolores, but there's no need, Carmen said firmly. Why not? Her mother-in-law looked at her son with a hurt expression. Miguelito, can't your mother help her own children? Miguel, caught between two fires, awkwardly smiled. Of course, you can, Mom. But Carmen is right, we'll manage on our own. You don't need to spend so much time on us. No trouble at all, Dolores Fernandez waved her hands. What else should I do in retirement? Watch soap operas? No, I'd rather take care of you. After breakfast, when Miguel went to take a shower, Carmen started getting ready. Where are you going, Carmencita? Her mother-in-law asked as she arranged the clean dishes. Out for some errands, Carmen replied vaguely. I need to buy something. I'll go with you, Dolores Fernandez cheered. I'll help you pick everything you need for the trip. No, I'll manage, Carmen quickly countered. Just personal shopping. Her mother-in-law pursed her lips but didn't insist. When Carmen was in the hallway, Dolores Fernandez casually asked, Where do you keep your passports? We need to check the visa expiration dates. We don't need a visa for the Canaries, it's part of Spain, Carmen replied, fastening her jacket. And the passports are in a safe place. Leaving her dissatisfied mother-in-law with Miguel, Carmen went to the electronics store. There, she picked a set of 3 miniature cameras with motion sensors and remote access via a phone app. The salesman assured her that installation was easy, just place the devices in the right spots and connect them to Wi-Fi. When she returned home a couple of hours later, she was met with an unexpected scene. Miguel was watching soccer, and Dolores Fernandez was ironing his shirts, humming to herself. The apartment was sparkling clean, even the baseboards had been wiped. I decided to clean up a bit, her mother-in-law proudly announced. Hope you don't mind, Carmencita. Not at all. Thank you so much, Carmen forced a smile, noticing that her things in the closet had been rearranged in the right order. All day, Dolores Fernandez showed incredible housewifely skills, washing windows, rewashing curtains, even organizing the attic despite the young couple's protests. By evening, Carmen was exhausted not so much physically as mentally from her mother-in-law's constant presence and the need to maintain polite conversation. Mom, it's getting late. You should go home, Miguel finally said when the clock showed 9 p.m. Oh, right, Dolores Fernandez suddenly realized. I've been working so much with you, but I'll come back tomorrow. I need to organize the closet in the hallway. There's such a mess. When the door closed behind her mother-in-law, Carmen collapsed on the couch. Miguel, don't you find it strange, this sudden eagerness from your mom to help us clean? Especially after she found out about our trip. Well, moms always loved cleanliness, Miguel replied uncertainly. And besides, she just wants to be helpful. She's been looking for something all day, Carmen insisted. Did you see how she was peeking into every drawer? Asking about the passports. Carmen, you're exaggerating, Miguel hugged his wife. Mom really did change her attitude toward our trip. She probably realized we have the right to take a break. Carmen wanted to argue that a pig would fly before Dolores Fernandez would willingly let her Miguelito go to a paradise island without her control, but she bit her tongue. Instead, she said, I hope you're right. By the way, I bought a new air humidifier for the bedroom. Can you help me set it up? In the bedroom, making sure the door was closed, Carmen took the box with the cameras from her bag. What's this? Miguel asked in surprise. Surveillance cameras, Carmen answered calmly. I want to install them in the apartment. Why? Miguel frowned. Do you think we'll get robbed? No, Carmen looked him straight in the eyes. I want to know what your mother does when she's alone in our apartment. Carmen. Miguel protested. Do you realize what you're saying? It's my mother. She would never. Remember my earrings that disappeared after her visit? Or the mortgage documents she accidentally spilled tea on? Or... Those were accidents, Miguel interrupted. I won't allow surveillance of my mother in our house. Carmen sighed deeply, trying to stay calm. Okay, let's do this. I'll install the cameras, but I won't tell you where. If after a month the footage shows nothing suspicious, I'll remove them and admit I was wrong. Miguel hesitated. On one hand, he thought it was wrong to install surveillance on his own mother. On the other hand, he couldn't deny that some of the past accidents seemed strange. All right, he finally agreed. But if there's nothing, you'll stop suspecting my mom of every sin. Deal, Carmen smiled with relief. The next few days turned into a strange routine. Dolores Fernandez came every morning, loaded with food and helpful advice, and left late in the evening, leaving behind a sparkling clean apartment. She washed all the curtains, cleaned all the dishes, even the collectible glasses Carmen kept for special occasions. She replaced light bulbs with more energy-efficient ones, rearranged the furniture for better energy flow, and made a habit of calling at least 5 times a day to check if they needed help. Every evening, Carmen, returning from work, checked the camera footage. The first few days were clean. Dolores Fernandez was indeed cleaning, though she periodically peeked into the young couple's closets and drawers. But on the 4th day, Carmen noticed something disturbing. Her mother-in-law was methodically searching their bedroom while the couple was at work. She looked under the mattress, tapped the walls, even moved furniture, clearly searching for a hidden compartment. What are you looking for, Dona Dolores? Carmen muttered as she watched the footage. The answer was obvious: the passports. Dolores Fernandez was clearly looking for their passports. On the 7th day of Dolores Fernandez's relentless care, Carmen returned home earlier than usual and caught her mother-in-law in a strange activity. She was studying travel brochures and writing something in a notebook. Carmencita. Dolores Fernandez jumped in surprise. You're early today? Yes, I finished early. Carmen glanced at the notebook, but Dolores Fernandez quickly closed it. What are you studying? Just some small things, her mother-in-law forced a smile. I'm just curious about where you're going. You know, I had a chat with my friend Pilar's niece from the travel agency. It turns out that if a tourist can't go, the ticket can be transferred to someone else. Can you imagine, just like that? Carmen felt a chill run down her spine. Interesting information. Yes, Dolores Fernandez nodded eagerly. Of course, it's just theoretical, just in case. You never know what might happen. Just then, Carmen's phone rang. It was Miguel. Hey, I'm at the store, he said. Should I buy something for dinner? Yes, please buy wine, Carmen answered, watching her mother-in-law frantically gather the brochures on the table, and something sweet. It's been a tough day. After Dolores Fernandez left, finally citing an important meeting in the housing committee, Carmen showed Miguel the latest footage. See, she's clearly looking for something. Carmen rewound the video, showing the particularly suspicious moments, and these talks about transferring the ticket. Miguel, don't you find that strange? Miguel frowned, looking at the screen. On the footage, his mother, looking around, was tapping the walls in the bathroom, apparently searching for a hiding spot. Maybe she's just... He hesitated, unable to come up with an excuse. I don't know, Carmen. This looks strange. I agree. She's trying to find our passports, Carmen said confidently. I don't know what she plans to do with them, but it's not good, that's for sure. Let's not panic too soon. Miguel turned off the laptop. For now, she's just searching the apartment. It's unpleasant, but not criminal. Miguel, she specifically found out how to transfer the ticket, Carmen exclaimed. Don't you see the connection? Miguel sighed heavily. Okay, I'll talk to her. I'll tell her we noticed her searches. And... No, Carmen grabbed her husband's hand. Not at all. If she finds out about the cameras, we'll never know what she's planning. Let's just keep watching. I'm sure she'll reveal herself. Miguel reluctantly agreed. All evening, he was silent and thoughtful, clearly troubled by what he had seen. Carmen didn't press him. She understood it wasn't easy for her husband to accept that his mother might have bad intentions. The next morning, Dolores Fernandez appeared at the doorstep with a huge bag of groceries and a beaming smile. Miguelito, Carmencita, I decided to throw you a real celebration. I'll make your favorite dishes, and then we can look at your wedding photos. I even brought the album. Miguel, already dressed for work, shrugged apologetically. Mom, I'm sorry, but I have an important meeting today. I can't stay. I have a meeting too, Carmen added. We'll both be late. Dolores Fernandez's face froze for a moment, but she quickly regained composure. That's fine, I'll cook everything, and when you get back, dinner will be ready. Meanwhile, I'll tidy up a little more. I noticed yesterday that the attic is full of dust, and allergies could flare up. But we're not allergic, Carmen pointed out. Well, what if you are? Her mother-in-law raised her finger meaningfully. Better safe than sorry. As they left the apartment, Miguel quietly said, Maybe you should stay home? Watch her. No, Carmen replied firmly. The cameras will capture everything she does. If I stay, she won't do anything. We need to let her act freely. All day at work, Carmen couldn't sit still. She kept checking the app on her phone, tracking the movement in the apartment. Dolores Fernandez was indeed cleaning, but she kept interrupting her work with thorough searches. During lunch break, Carmen saw that her mother-in-law had finally gotten to the cabinets in the living room and, with a triumphant look, pulled out the old passport. Gotcha, Carmen whispered, looking at the phone screen. She immediately called Miguel. Miguel, she found the passport, the old expired one I left in the cabinet. And so? Miguel's voice was tense. Not yet. She's just looking at it, flipping through it. But I have a bad feeling. Don't work yourself up, Miguel tried to reassure her. Maybe she's just curious. But by the end of the workday, the situation became clear. In the footage, which Carmen watched on the subway on her way home, it was clearly visible that Dolores Fernandez took the passport, looked around, then slipped it into the pocket of the bathrobe that Carmen usually wore after showering. Then her mother-in-law took the robe to the bathroom, hesitated for a moment, and put it in the washing machine. She set the cotton cycle at 90 degrees and started the wash. Carmen froze, staring at the screen. There it was. This was what Dolores Fernandez had been planning. She was going to ruin the passport, causing the trip to fall through, and maybe even replace Carmen with herself, since she had specifically inquired about transferring the ticket. When Carmen exited the subway, she called Miguel. Miguel, don't say a word to your mom. Let her think her plan worked. Just come home like usual. I'll show you everything. When Carmen entered the apartment, the smell of ham and fresh pastries greeted her. Dolores Fernandez, wearing an apron, was bustling in the kitchen. Carmencita, it's so good you came. I made fideuà. Your favorite. And also, she hesitated, lowering her gaze, there's been a little mishap. What happened? Carmen feigned ignorance. Well, you see, I decided to wash your things. Her mother-in-law shook her head sorrowfully, and I accidentally didn't check the pockets of your bathrobe, and there was your passport. Dolores Fernandez handed Carmen the damp, deformed document, its pages stuck together in a solid lump. I'm so sorry, I'm such a klutz. Her mother-in-law dabbed at a non-existent tear. But don't worry. I've already called the travel agency, and they said the ticket can be transferred to someone else. The price difference isn't much. So, Miguelito won't miss out on the trip. I can fly in your place. Carmen took the ruined passport and slowly flipped through the softened pages. For a second, she wanted to say everything she thought about her mother-in-law, but she restrained herself. What a shame, Carmen said calmly. At least I have time to get a new one. A new one? Dolores Fernandez was confused. But that's at least a month, and you're flying in 3 weeks. Don't worry, Dona Dolores, Carmen smiled. I'll manage. At that moment, Miguel entered the apartment. Seeing his wife and mother frozen in the kitchen with the ruined passport, he stopped. What happened? Oh, Miguelito. Dolores Fernandez threw her hands up. Such an inconvenience. I accidentally washed Carmen's passport. Now we'll have to change your plans. Let's have dinner first, Carmen interrupted her, giving Miguel a meaningful look. And then we'll discuss all the options. At dinner, Dolores Fernandez was unusually talkative. She talked about what documents were needed to get an emergency replacement passport, how long it would take, and repeated that the travel agency had already confirmed that the tourist could be replaced. Can you imagine, Miguelito? It's really not expensive. I would even pay the price difference myself. After all, I rarely see the world. Miguel listened in silence, occasionally nodding and glancing at Carmen. While Dolores Fernandez reveled in her imaginary triumph, describing the joys of a vacation with her son, Carmen gently squeezed Miguel's knee under the table, a signal that it was time to distract his mother. Miguel nodded in understanding. Mom, tell me more about this ticket transfer option, he began, serving himself a second helping of fideuà. Did you clarify everything with the agency? Dolores Fernandez immediately perked up, sensing that her son had bitten on her offer. Of course, mi hijo, I checked everything, she said triumphantly, looking at Carmen. All we need is to change the name on the ticket, the price difference is very small, I checked, and the insurance. Passport details are submitted a week before the flight, so we still have time. While her mother-in-law enthusiastically detailed everything, Carmen quietly got up from the table and went to the bedroom. There, she retrieved 2 real passports from the hidden safe behind the bookshelf, took photos of them, and sent the messages to Miguel's phone. A few seconds later, she heard a short ping from the kitchen indicating an incoming message. Sorry, Mom, I need to check something, Miguel's voice sounded tense. There was a pause, and then Dolores Fernandez asked worriedly. What's wrong, Miguelito? Carmen returned to the kitchen just as Miguel slowly lifted his eyes from the phone and looked at his mother with an expression she had never seen on his face before. A mixture of disappointment, distrust, and sudden realization. Mom, he said quietly, did you deliberately search for and ruin Carmen's passport so you could go instead of her? Dolores Fernandez turned pale but quickly composed herself. What nonsense! I just wanted to help with the cleaning. You know how neat I am. How could I have known there was a passport in the bathrobe? From the camera footage, Carmen replied dryly, pulling out her phone. Look, here it is. She played the video where her mother-in-law methodically searched the apartment, found the passport in the cupboard, then intentionally placed it in the bathrobe's pocket and started the wash cycle with the highest temperature. Dolores Fernandez's face went through a range of emotions, from surprise to anger, then froze into a mask of righteous indignation. You were spying on me in my own home? Her voice trembled. Miguelito, did you let this person install cameras to spy on your own mother? Don't avoid the issue, Mom. Miguel was unusually firm. Did you really intentionally destroy the document to ruin our trip? How dare you say that? Dolores Fernandez threw her hands up, but her outrage seemed less convincing. I just wanted to help, and besides, it's all for the best. Instead of wasting all that money on some islands, you could've. Mom, Miguel interrupted her tirade. Answer the question. Did you do it on purpose? Under her son's intense gaze, Dolores Fernandez deflated like a punctured balloon. Her shoulders slumped, and the expression of a caught child appeared on her face. Well, so what if I did? She suddenly replied aggressively. I'm his mother. I have the right to spend time with my own son. And this, she threw a venomous glance at Carmen, this upstart took you away from me. A year now, Miguelito. A year without spending weekends with me like before. You don't come for lunch every day. You don't consult me on important matters. Miguel listened without interrupting, and in his eyes, Carmen saw the slow crumbling of the image of the perfect mother he had cherished all these years. I just wanted to be with you, Dolores Fernandez switched to a plaintive tone. On those Canary Islands, lying on the beach, swimming in the ocean. Is that a crime? Doesn't a mother deserve attention from her only son? That's not what you did, Mom. Miguel shook his head. You didn't just want to go with us. You intentionally tried to exclude my wife from the trip and deceitfully take her place, but she wouldn't have suffered. Dolores Fernandez puffed her lips in indignation. Well, she'd miss one trip, big deal. But at least I'd finally see the world. You know, at my age, it's dangerous to travel alone, and here's this chance. A heavy silence hung in the room. Carmen watched Miguel, seeing how his long-standing habit of yielding to his mother battled with his newly developed ability to recognize her manipulations. Well then, Mom, Miguel finally said. The passport you ruined is expired. It's an old document of Carmen's. Our valid passports are in a safe place, and we're going to the Canaries in 3 weeks, just as planned. Dolores Fernandez froze with her mouth open. Expired, she mumbled. But why then? Because I knew you were up to something, Carmen replied calmly. You got too suddenly eager to help with the cleaning and were too insistent about our passports. Dolores Fernandez's face turned red with fury and humiliation. So, it was a trap, she hissed. You deliberately gave me that passport? No, Dona Dolores, Carmen shook her head. I just didn't throw away the old document. But you specifically searched for it, deliberately placed it in the pocket of my bathrobe, and deliberately started the wash cycle at the highest temperature. Her mother-in-law suddenly stood up from the table. Her hands trembled with anger. So this is how you raised your wife, Miguel? Her voice dripped with venom. Setting traps for your own mother. Spying on me through cameras like I'm a criminal. Is this how she taught you to treat your mother? No, Mom, Miguel stood up as well. You taught me not to trust you with your actions, your constant interference, your attempts to control my life. And today, you finally convinced me that you have no respect for my choices, my wife, or our family. Dolores Fernandez looked at her son as if she were seeing him for the first time. This confident, firm man was nothing like the obedient Miguelito she had always manipulated. You've insulted me in my own home, she hissed through her teeth. Made me look like a fool, humiliated me, all because of some. She faltered, meeting her son's gaze. Finish that thought, Mom, Miguel said coldly. Who do you really think my wife is? Dolores Fernandez bit her tongue, realizing she was crossing a line, but the resentment and anger overwhelmed her. Some upstart who trapped my son, she spat. Who turned you against your own mother, who spends your money on clothes and expensive resorts instead of helping me with my medicine. And stop. Miguel raised his hand. First of all, Carmen never turned me against you. On the contrary, she always convinced me that we should maintain a relationship despite your constant attacks. Secondly, we saved money for this trip together from our shared income. And third, Mom, I transfer 200 euros to you every month for medicine and groceries. Considering your pension is quite decent. Dolores Fernandez grew quiet, but her eyes still burned with indignation. She clearly wasn't going to admit she was wrong. I've given my whole life to you, Miguelito, she began again with a trembling voice. I stayed up nights, went without food, so you could get an education. And now, in my old age, I was hoping for at least some basic gratitude, attention, care. Mom, you're not old, Miguel said tiredly. You're 61 years old. You're a healthy, active woman. You have plenty of friends and activities. And I take care of you, I call every day, visit at least once a week, help financially. But I can't and don't want to live your life. I have my own. Vale. Dolores Fernandez realized sympathy wouldn't come and abruptly changed tactics. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Fine. Stay with your precious wife, but don't come to me when she spends all your money and finds someone wealthier. Let's call it a day. Miguel opened the door. Give me time to cool down, Mom. I'll call when I'm ready to talk again. Don't bother, Dolores Fernandez tossed over her shoulder as she left. Don't call at all. I understand. A mother is no longer needed. When the door closed behind her mother-in-law, a ringing silence filled the apartment. Miguel stood still for a few seconds, staring at the door, then slowly turned to Carmen. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of this, for her, for not believing you before. Carmen walked over and hugged her husband. It's okay. You're not responsible for her actions. How did you guess she would try to ruin the passport? Miguel asked, sitting down on the couch. I didn't know for sure, Carmen sat beside him. But after she started asking about transferring the ticket, it was clear she was up to something. And when I saw on the camera footage how she methodically searched the apartment, I decided to cover my bases. The old passport was the perfect bait. And you didn't tell me beforehand? That wasn't a question, it was a statement. Sorry, Carmen smiled apologetically. I was afraid you'd accidentally give the plan away. You always get so transparent when it comes to your mom. Miguel gave a grim smile. Yeah, I've got some work to do on my poker face, he paused. You know, I always thought your suspicions about my mom were just the usual tension between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. But today I saw something I've never noticed before or never wanted to notice. What exactly? Carmen asked softly. Her obsession. Her desire to control me at all costs. Her willingness to lie, manipulate, harm. He faltered. Harm you just to get her way. That's not love, Carmen. That's some kind of sick dependence. Carmen quietly stroked her husband's shoulder, allowing him to vent. And the worst part is, Miguel continued, I've been playing along with it all my life. Always giving in, always going along with it. Even when I started dating you, I still put her wishes above ours. Remember how we canceled our trip to Barcelona for the May holidays because she suddenly needed help with cleaning at the summer house? I remember, Carmen nodded. But that's in the past, Miguel. The important thing is that now you've seen everything with your own eyes. Yeah, he straightened up and looked at his wife with determination. And this won't happen again. I've had enough of this control and manipulation. From now on, things will be different. In her heart, Carmen doubted that the issue would be solved so easily. Long-established behavioral patterns don't change overnight. But seeing the determination in her husband's eyes, she wanted to believe that change was possible. What are you going to do? She asked. For starters, I'll keep my distance, give Mom time to realize that her methods no longer work. After that, Maybe I'll suggest she see a psychologist with me. But for now, let's go to the Canaries and finally relax without daily phone calls and check-ins. Sounds like a plan, Carmen smiled. The next few days passed in a strange calm. Dolores Fernandez didn't call or show up, which was completely unlike her. Normally, after a conflict, she'd begin a siege. First, she'd stay silent for a day or two, then send sorrowful messages, and finally, show up at their house with a migraine or heart problems. But this time, nothing. Maybe she's really upset for good. Miguel asked with doubt on the third day of silence. I doubt it, Carmen shook her head. She's probably preparing something special. And she was right. On the fourth day, the phone rang. Miguel, glancing at the screen, raised his eyebrows in surprise. It's Aunt Lola, Mom's cousin. Strange, she never calls me. The conversation lasted almost half an hour, and as Miguel listened, his face grew darker. Finally, he hung up the phone. So? Carmen asked. I have a bad feeling. Mom's called all the relatives. Miguel rubbed his temples tiredly. She told them we kicked her out of the house, refused her help, and now we're not giving her money for medicine. And because of that, her blood pressure worsened, and the doctors found heart problems. And now the whole family thinks we're monsters? Carmen guessed. Exactly. Aunt Lola called to shame me and remind me that one day I'll get old and will need my children's help. Maybe we should tell them the truth? Show them the footage? Miguel shook his head. Useless. They're all on her side by default. To them, she's the poor, lonely woman who sacrificed everything for her son. And what are you going to do? Nothing, Miguel replied unexpectedly firmly. Let them say whatever they want. I'm not going to justify myself to every relative. Mom chose this tactic, so be it. Sooner or later, everyone will see she's fine. Carmen silently hugged her husband, proud of his determination yet worried. She knew how important family approval was to him. There's one thing I regret, Miguel suddenly said. What? That I didn't see all of this earlier. How many years I let myself be manipulated, how many of your requests and wishes I ignored because Mom would be upset, he clenched his fists. Never again. The next day, a message came from an unfamiliar number. It was Miguel's cousin, whom they hadn't been in touch with for years. Hey, I heard you had a conflict with Aunt Dolores. She's telling everyone that you're going to the Canaries and leaving her without money for medicine. Is that true? Miguel showed the message to Carmen and asked, What should I reply? The truth, she shrugged. Briefly, without any extra details. Miguel nodded and wrote the response, Hey. No, that's not true. I'm still helping my mom financially, just like I have for the past few years. And Carmen and I are going to the Canaries together. It's our first vacation together in a year of marriage. A few minutes later, the reply came. I thought Aunt Dolores was exaggerating. She's always been a drama queen. Enjoy the Canaries. Miguel smiled and showed Carmen the message. See? Not everyone falls for her manipulations. That's reassuring, Carmen agreed. But something tells me Dolores Fernandez won't give up so easily. And she was right. That evening, the doorbell rang. On the doorstep stood Miguel's uncle, Javier Fernandez, Dolores' brother, a stern man with a military posture. Hello, nephew, he said grimly as he entered the apartment. We need to talk. The conversation lasted almost an hour. Javier Fernandez, tapping his fingers on the table, repeated all the same accusations as Aunt Lola, ungrateful son, abandoned mother, wife who tore them apart. Miguel listened patiently, then calmly, without much emotion, told his version of the events. When he finished, his uncle thoughtfully scratched the back of his head. So, you're saying Dolo wanted to ruin your wife's passport? And you have a recording? Yes, Miguel turned on the laptop and showed the video. Javier Fernandez watched the screen for a long time, then sighed heavily. I recognize my sister. She's always been persistent. Even as a child, if she wanted something, she went after it. He raised his gaze to his nephew. But still, call her. She's going crazy, worrying. I'll call her, for sure, Miguel nodded. But not now. First, I need her to realize this behavior can't continue. When the uncle left, promising to straighten his sister out, Carmen sighed with relief. It seems we've found an ally. Maybe, Miguel replied uncertainly. But the battle isn't over yet. Mom won't give up so easily. And once again, he was right. The next day, when they returned home from work, they found Dolores Fernandez sitting in front of their apartment door on a small folding stool with a dramatic expression on her face. Mom, what are you doing here? Miguel stopped a few steps away from her. I'm waiting for my son, she answered in a tragic voice. Who won't answer his mother's calls? I asked for time, Mom, Miguel reminded her. And I promised I'd call when I was ready. Time? Dolores Fernandez threw up her hands. What if I run out of time? The doctor said with my blood pressure, I could. Mom, Miguel interrupted her monologue. Let's skip the drama. What do you want? Dolores Fernandez was momentarily taken aback by his direct question. She was used to her son falling for her manipulations, letting himself be dragged into emotional games. I want to talk, she finally forced out. I need your attention, Miguelito. All right, Miguel suddenly agreed. Let's talk. But not here, in the hallway. Let's go inside. Dolores Fernandez, clearly not expecting such an easy victory, quickly got up from the stool and followed her son and daughter-in-law into the apartment. There, she immediately began her usual inspection. How much dust on the shelves? Was the dishware washed properly? Were things lying around where they shouldn't be? Sit down, Mom, Miguel pointed to a chair in the living room. What did you want to talk about? Dolores Fernandez sat down, smoothed out the wrinkles in her dress, and took on a sorrowful expression. Son, I came to apologize, she began unexpectedly. I was wrong when I tried to stop your trip. Carmen barely suppressed a gasp. Her mother-in-law had never before admitted her mistakes. Dolores Fernandez continued, skillfully pausing to make her voice sound more emotional. I just really wanted to see those islands. At my age, there aren't many joys left, and this was such an opportunity. Miguel listened in silence, not interrupting. And then, her mother-in-law moved on to the next point. I see so little of you, son. You're always busy, always working. I thought this would be a chance to spend time together, like we used to. She sighed intermittently, dabbed at a non-existent tear, and looked up at her son. Forgive me, Miguelito, I won't interfere anymore. You two go ahead, relax, and I'll manage somehow. A pause followed. Carmen looked at her husband and was surprised to see not tenderness or pity on his face, but quiet determination. Thanks for the apology, Mom, Miguel said. I accept it, but we need to have a more serious conversation than just this passport issue. Dolores Fernandez tensed, as if she felt the usual script, apologized, cried, son melts, was failing. What other conversation? She asked warily, throwing a quick glance at the silent Carmen. About boundaries, Mom, Miguel sat on the edge of the couch opposite his mother. About how you constantly interfere in our life, try to control my decisions, and don't respect my choices. What nonsense, Miguelito. Dolores Fernandez fumed. I'm just looking out for you. Is it a crime to want the best for my son? No, Mom, but it is a crime to deliberately harm my wife, Miguel replied firmly. And it's not just about the passport. I finally see the whole picture. And how you accidentally ruined Carmen's wedding dress. And how you forgot to pass on important interview information to me. And how you discouraged me from taking a vacation with my wife, and how you tried to turn all the relatives against her. Dolores Fernandez fidgeted in her chair. Her face turned red. This is all a lie. You're exaggerating. It's all her. She pointed a finger at Carmen. She's the one turning you against me. No, Mom, Miguel shook his head. Carmen never spoke badly about you. On the contrary, she always insisted I maintain a relationship with you, despite your behavior. But now I've seen the truth and made my decision. A heavy silence hung in the room. Dolores Fernandez froze, her tense gaze fixed on her son. What decision? She finally asked in a trembling voice. Miguel took a deep breath. Carmen saw how difficult this conversation was for him, but she also noticed a new, unfamiliar determination in him. I'm no longer going to allow you to control my life, he said calmly. I won't tolerate disrespect towards my wife. I won't turn a blind eye to your manipulations. From now on, we will have clear boundaries, Mom. And if you cross them, we'll have to limit our communication. Dolores Fernandez turned pale. She clearly didn't expect this turn of events. You're rejecting your own mother, she whispered, instantly switching to her usual victim act. After everything I've done for you? No, Mom, I'm not rejecting you, Miguel patiently explained. I'm just setting healthy boundaries. You are my mother, and I love you. But Carmen, my wife, my choice, and I won't allow you to hurt her or try to come between us. So now she's more important than your mother? Dolores Fernandez went on the offensive. Her voice rose to a piercing pitch. You choose this upstart over the woman who gave birth to you, raised you, and sacrificed her whole life? Miguel didn't rise to the provocation. It's not a question of choosing, Mom. You both are important to me. But you have to understand, I've grown up, I have my own family, and you either accept that, or what? Dolores Fernandez interrupted him. What will you do? Kick your own mother out of the house? Stop calling? Abandon me in my old age? Or we'll have to seriously limit our communication, Miguel finished. And by the way, about financial assistance. At the mention of money, Dolores Fernandez immediately shifted her focus. Carmen noticed how her expression changed from righteous anger to wary interest. What about it? Dolores asked cautiously. In recent years, I've been sending you 200 euros every month, Miguel said calmly. That's a considerable amount, especially considering your pension is around 1,000 euros. You also have income from renting out Mom's apartment. Dolores Fernandez remained silent, clearly not wanting to comment on her financial situation. But after what happened, I've reconsidered that decision, Miguel continued. I won't be sending money to your account anymore. What? Dolores Fernandez jumped in her chair. You're cutting off my means of survival? Because of her? She pointed again at Carmen. No, Mom. Not because of Carmen, but because of your behavior, Miguel answered calmly. And I'm not cutting off your means of survival. You have enough income to live comfortably. But what about my medicine? The doctors, the bathroom renovation? Dolores Fernandez began feverishly listing her expenses. If you need help with something specific, treatment, repairs, you can ask me, and I'll help. But the monthly transfers without any accountability, spent on who knows what, are stopping. Dolores Fernandez froze, realizing the seriousness of the situation, then slowly got up from her chair, clutching her chest. So this is how you repay your mother for all the sacrifices, she said with theatrical distress. I understand now. I won't impose anymore. Live as you wish, but don't come to me when she leaves you for someone younger and richer. Carmen silently observed the scene, knowing it was useless to intervene. This was a conversation between mother and son, and Miguel needed to handle it on his own. Mom, if you keep insulting my wife, you really should leave, Miguel said quietly but firmly. I don't want to cut ties with you. I want you to be part of our life, but under healthy conditions, with respect for my choices and my family. Dolores Fernandez stared at her son for several seconds, as if seeing a stranger before her, then suddenly turned and walked toward the door. I've given my whole life for you, she mumbled, putting on her coat in the hallway. And you, Dios te bendiga, Miguel, and your wife. When the door slammed behind her, Carmen walked over to her husband and hugged him around the shoulders. He sat with his head down, and it was clear that the conversation had been hard for him. "You did well," she said quietly. "It needed to be done." "I know." Miguel looked up at his wife with a tired expression. "But it's still hard. She's my mother, despite everything." Of course, Carmen sat down beside him. "And you're not rejecting her. You're just setting healthy boundaries. Do you think she'll understand and accept them?" Carmen wanted to offer a comforting lie but decided to be honest. "I doubt it, at least not right away. Dolores Fernandez is too used to controlling you. It will be hard for her to accept the changes." Miguel nodded in agreement. "What happens next?" Carmen asked. "I don't know," Miguel admitted. "But whatever happens, I won't let her come between us again. That's a promise." In the following days, it became clear that Dolores Fernandez wasn't going to give up without a fight. She launched a full-scale smear campaign against her daughter-in-law, calling all the relatives and acquaintances with heartbreaking stories about how Carmen had stolen her son from her and left her without means to survive. "Aunt Inez called," Miguel said one evening, entering the bedroom. "She says Mom's been crying every day for the last 2 weeks and complaining that we've abandoned her." Carmen, packing for their trip to the Canaries, looked up. "And what did you say?" "The truth, that we haven't abandoned her, that I'm still willing to communicate and help her if necessary, but I won't tolerate manipulation or disrespect toward you." Carmen walked over and hugged her husband. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy for you." "At least I feel like an adult now," Miguel smiled faintly. "Strange, huh? I'm 32, and only now I'm starting to realize that I can live without my mom's approval." The days before their departure flew by quickly. Dolores Fernandez continued her campaign, but to the young couple's surprise, many relatives began to see through her manipulations. Aunt Lola, who initially fully believed her sister, began to have doubts after talking to Miguel and decided to visit Dolores Fernandez personally. Seeing her sister, supposedly dying of hunger and illness, in a new dress with a manicure and hair done, getting ready for a flamenco concert, she drew her conclusions. "You know, nephew," she called Miguel. "I think I understand why you made this decision. Dolores has always been a drama lover." Uncle Javier even sided with the young couple, telling his sister it was time for her to find a man her own age and stop clinging to her son. Finally, the day of departure came. Carmen and Miguel arrived at Madrid Barajas Airport 3 hours before the flight, checked in, and headed to the waiting area. Both were in high spirits. 10 days of paradise awaited them. "I can't believe we're finally flying," Carmen smiled as they sat in a cafe overlooking the runway. "After everything that's happened, I can't either," Miguel squeezed her hand. "And you know, I somehow feel like this trip will be special. Not just because of the ocean and the beaches, but because of the freedom." Carmen nodded knowingly. She felt it too, like they both had shed a heavy burden they had carried for too long. Suddenly, Miguel tensed, looking past Carmen's head. She turned around and saw Dolores Fernandez rushing toward them. Her mother-in-law was dressed in an expensive suit and carrying a large bag. "What's she doing here?" Miguel muttered, standing up from the table. Dolores Fernandez, spotting her son, quickened her pace and was standing in front of them in a minute, out of breath from walking quickly. "Miguelito, I'm so glad I made it," she exclaimed, trying to hug him. "I thought I'd be late." "Mom, what are you doing here?" Miguel stepped back, looking at his mother in confusion. "What do you mean?" Dolores Fernandez raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I came to say goodbye to you before the flight. Don't I have the right to see off my son?" Carmen exchanged a wary glance with her husband. This sudden change in her mother-in-law's behavior seemed suspicious. "You can, of course," Miguel answered cautiously. "It's just unexpected. I've been thinking a lot, son." Dolores Fernandez adopted her most sincere expression. "And I realized I was wrong. I have to let you go. Let you live your life. After all, a mother should rejoice in her son's happiness." right? She turned to Carmen with a forced smile. And Carmen, I want to apologize. I wasn't very fair, but now I understand that I need to accept your marriage to Miguelito and be grateful for what you're doing to make him happy. Carmen nodded silently, not trusting the sudden shift in her mother-in-law's mood. I even brought you a gift. Dolores Fernandez began rummaging in her bag. I bought this specially for your vacation. She pulled out a bulky bundle and handed it to Miguel. It's a snorkeling set, sunscreen, and some other useful vacation items, she explained. And I also wanted to ask for a favor. What kind? Miguel asked cautiously. Could I walk you to the boarding gate? I get so anxious when you fly so far. It'll make me feel better. Dolores Fernandez's eyes filled with tears. I'm so worried. It'll be better for me if I'm there. Miguel exchanged a look with Carmen. She subtly shrugged, as if to say, you decide. All right, Mom, Miguel nodded. But let's keep it low-key, okay? What drama? Dolores Fernandez shook her head. I just want to be close until the last moment. The next hour passed in a tense atmosphere. Dolores Fernandez was unusually friendly, smiling constantly, and even trying to joke. She asked about their vacation plans, gave advice about acclimating, and occasionally threw tender glances at her son. Only Carmen noticed how that tenderness instantly disappeared whenever her mother-in-law looked at her. Finally, the boarding announcement was made for their flight. Miguel stood up and grabbed their carry-on luggage. Well, Mom, it's time, he said, hugging Dolores Fernandez. Thanks for coming to see us off. Of course, son, his mother-in-law hugged him tightly in return. How else could I do it? Call me every day, okay? And send me pictures. Definitely, Miguel promised. Well, see you in 10 days. Dolores Fernandez turned to Carmen and, to her surprise, hugged her too, though much more stiffly. Take care of him, she whispered in her ear. And take care of yourself too. Carmen nodded, still not trusting this sudden warmth. They headed toward the boarding gate, and Carmen noticed out of the corner of her eye that Dolores Fernandez was carefully watching them, not leaving. This is strange, she murmured when they walked far enough away. I don't believe in her sudden transformation. Me neither, Miguel admitted. But let her think we believe it. It's easier that way. They passed through passport control, and Carmen sighed with relief as the officer handed back their documents with boarding passes. Now nothing could stop their long-awaited vacation. The flight was short, just 2.5 hours from Madrid to Tenerife, but even the slight fatigue couldn't spoil their mood. When the plane finally landed at Tenerife South Airport and they stepped onto the ramp under the dazzling sun of the Canary Islands, Carmen felt the weight of the past few weeks finally lift from her shoulders. We did it, she whispered, squeezing her husband's hand. We're here. The transfer to the resort on the south of the island took about an hour. The whole time, they sat silently on the bus, holding hands and watching the turquoise water of the Atlantic Ocean shimmer in the rays of the setting sun. When they arrived at the hotel, they were greeted by smiling staff with welcome drinks and cool towels. Welcome to Grand Melia Palacio de Azora, the hotel manager greeted them. Your ocean view suite is ready. The room was exactly as shown in the pictures, spacious, bright, with a large terrace that opened right onto the ocean. Carmen stood on the balcony, gazing at the endless expanse of water, and couldn't believe it was real, not just a dream. Do you like it? Miguel hugged her from behind. It's paradise, she sighed. True paradise. The first days of vacation flew by like a fairy tale. They snorkeled among colorful fish in the Los Gigantes Bay, sunbathed on the black volcanic beach, climbed to the top of Mount Tide, dined in cozy tapas bars, and simply enjoyed each other's company without the constant tension and concern for other people's opinions. On the third day, when they returned from an evening walk along the promenade, Miguel turned on his phone to check the local time and found dozens of missed calls from his mother and just as many messages. What's happened? Carmen asked anxiously, noticing his frown. Mom, Miguel answered briefly, looking through the messages. She says she's had a heart attack, that she's in the hospital, that she's feeling very bad, and the doctors aren't giving any guarantees. And you believe that? Carmen asked cautiously. Miguel looked up at her, his eyes showing exhaustion and a new determination. No, he said firmly. I don't believe it. It's her usual tactic. Every time I start to distance myself, suddenly there's a health problem. I'll call Uncle Javier and find out what's really going on. A few minutes of conversation with his uncle revealed that Dolores Fernandez had indeed called an ambulance, but after being examined in the hospital, no serious issues were found. The doctors diagnosed neurosis and recommended a sedative. I knew it. Miguel put his phone down. Another manipulation. Are you going to call her? Carmen asked. Later, Miguel decided. I'll send her a message saying I know about her condition from Uncle Javier and I'm glad nothing serious happened. I'll talk to her tomorrow. I don't want to spoil our evening. Carmen hugged her husband, feeling both pride in his firmness and sorrow that his mother continued playing her games, even from a distance. But living with Dolores Fernandez had taught her one thing: never let toxic people poison happy moments. And now, standing on the balcony with an ocean view in the arms of her beloved husband, she decided she would no longer allow her mother-in-law to have control over their lives. You know what I've realized these past few days? Carmen asked, looking at the setting sun, which turned the ocean into golden tones. What? Miguel kissed her on the top of the head. That true freedom begins when you stop seeking approval from those who will never give it to you. Miguel nodded thoughtfully. It took me 32 years and one ruined passport to understand this, he smiled. But better late than never. They stood, holding each other, watching as the ocean swallowed the sun, and for the first time in a long time, they felt truly free from expectations, manipulations, and outside control. Ahead of them lay a new life. It might not always be easy, but it would definitely be their own. Meanwhile, in Madrid, Dolores Fernandez was pacing the apartment, periodically checking her phone in anticipation of a call from her son. On the table lay an open notebook, where a neat handwriting outlined a new plan to regain influence over Miguelito after his return from the islands. The first point was to urgently land in the hospital before their flight. After all, a son can't refuse a severely ill mother who needs care, right? But she didn't know that with every day spent away from her control, the glasses through which Miguel had always viewed his mother were shattering more and more. And with every pointless call, with every manipulation, her chances of regaining her previous influence were fading irreversibly.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.